You already know who this is about. There is a person on your mind right now, and even before I say another word, you can feel it, not just as a thought, as something in your chest, a weight, a warmth, a name that lives somewhere beneath your ribs and surfaces, without being invited. You did not choose to think of this person today, and yet here you are. Perhaps it is someone who has been gone for weeks, or months, or longer. Perhaps it is someone still present in your life, but something between you has shifted, and neither of you has spoken about it honestly. Perhaps the last conversation ended in a way that left you with too many unfinished sentences. Whatever the shape of your situation, you know the feeling I'm describing, that particular ache that has no clean name. You have probably told yourself it does not matter anymore. You have probably tried to be rational about it, and then, in a quiet moment, a song, a dream, a familiar smell, they are back. Completely, inexplicably back. What I am going to show you tonight will change the way you see this entirely. Not because it will make the pain disappear, but because it will show you what is actually happening, beneath the surface of everything you think you understand about this situation. Something is at work that you cannot yet see, and that is exactly where we are going. Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human soul who ever lived, spent decades studying the invisible architecture of human relationships. He was not interested in behavior the way it appears on the surface, what people say, what they do, how they explain themselves. He was interested in what moves beneath all of that. The currents that operate in the dark, shaping everything we feel and choose and suffer through, long before we have any conscious awareness of them. And what Jung found, what he documented across decades of clinical work and psychological writing, is that the most powerful forces in our emotional lives are not the ones we can name. They are the ones we cannot. The concept at the center of this video is one that Jung considered foundational to all human experience. It is called the unconscious. Not the personal unconscious alone, though that is part of it, but the deeper layer beneath conscious life that stores everything we have felt, feared, desired, and suppressed, everything we have never fully processed, everything that is still alive in us, still moving, still reaching outward. Even when we believe we have moved on, Jung would tell you this: the unconscious does not lie. It does not pretend. It does not perform. And when someone occupies the unconscious the way this person occupies yours, that is not weakness, and it is not accident. It is information. The question is whether you are ready to read it. Jung observed that human beings are remarkably poor witnesses to their own inner experience. We believe we are conscious agents, that we want what we say we want, that we feel what we say we feel, that our decisions are made by our thinking minds. But Jung spent an entire lifetime demonstrating that this is largely an illusion, not a cruel illusion, a protective one, but an illusion nonetheless. Most of what drives you is happening in a room you do not have conscious access to, and that room has been extraordinarily busy since this person entered your life. What you are experiencing right now, this ongoing presence of someone in your thoughts, this sense that something between you is unfinished, is not a flaw in your emotional processing. It is not sentimentality. It is not obsession in the clinical sense. It is a documented psychological phenomenon that Jung observed in person after person, across cultures and generations and entirely different kinds of relationships. When two people form a deep bond, and that bond is disrupted without resolution, the unconscious does not simply register the ending and move forward. The unconscious does not work on calendar time. It does not respond to decisions or announcements or attempts to be rational. What the unconscious recognizes is incompletion, and incompletion, for the unconscious, is not a past state. It is a present one. You are not living in the past. You are living in an unresolved present. That distinction matters more than almost anything else I will say tonight. The person you are thinking of is not haunting you because you are weak or because you loved too much, or because you have failed somehow to heal correctly. They are present in your unconscious because something between you was never given its full shape. Something was started and not finished. Some recognition was almost reached and then retreated from. Some truth almost spoken and then swallowed. The unconscious holds all of it, and it will continue to hold all of it. It will continue to make you feel their presence, their weight, their pull, until something shifts. Not until you decide differently, until something actually moves. This is what Jung meant when he observed that we do not solve psychological problems. We outgrow them, and the outgrowing requires first that we understand what we are actually carrying. Now let us go one layer deeper, because so far we have been talking about what is happening in you. But Jung would not stop there. He would want you to understand what is happening in the other person as well. And this is where the insight becomes genuinely startling. The unconscious does not belong only to the person doing the feeling. It operates between people. Jung called this the relational field, the psychological space that two people create together, which has its own logic, its own momentum, its own life. When you form a significant bond with someone, you do not simply affect each other consciously. You enter each other's psychological landscape at a level far below conscious awareness. This means that the person you are thinking of right now, whatever they are doing on the surface, whatever distance they are maintaining, whatever silence they are presenting, is also being moved by forces they cannot name. Their unconscious has not resolved this either. It cannot. Resolution at that level does not come from deciding to move on. It does not come from time alone, or from new relationships, or from keeping busy. It comes from an inner reckoning that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. And here is the thing about that reckoning. When it begins to happen, even at the unconscious level, it sends ripples. Jung observed that the unconscious communicates not just inward, in dreams and feelings, but outward, in patterns of behavior that the person themselves may not understand. The sudden reach out, the unexplained return, the moment they appear in your life again without being able to fully explain why. These are not random. They are the unconscious doing its searching. You have not imagined the pull. The pull is real. The pull is mutual. But what it means, what it is actually asking for, that is something altogether different from what the surface story seems to be. The other person is not the cause of your pain. They are the occasion for it. Something in you was already waiting to be seen. Something in you was already incomplete, already searching. They did not create that. They revealed it. And that revelation, no matter how much it costs, is one of the most important things that can happen to a person. And somewhere in you, you already know this. Not consciously, but something in you knew, the moment you started watching this, that this was about more than them. Something in you sensed that underneath all the longing, underneath all the replaying of conversations, underneath all the hoping and the hurting, something else was being asked of you. Something that has nothing to do with whether they come back. You knew this before I said it. The knowing has been there. Quiet. Under all the noise. Here is what Jung would say is the central paradox of everything you are experiencing. Are you ready? The very intensity of the pull you feel, the thing that makes this so impossible to simply walk away from, is not proof that you need this person. It is proof that you need yourself. Sit with that for a moment, because it sounds like the kind of thing that dismisses what you feel. It is not. It is the opposite. It is taking what you feel with complete seriousness. Jung observed throughout his clinical work that the figures who haunt us most powerfully, who live in our minds with that particular quality of unbearable vividness, are never simply themselves. They are carriers. They carry something that belongs to us, something we have not yet been able to hold directly, a part of our own inner world that we could not access on our own, that needed a human face, a human relationship, to make it visible. This is what Jung called project, not in the dismissive way people often mean the word, not as an accusation, not as a way of saying your feelings are not real. Projection is the natural, inevitable process by which the unconscious makes itself known through what we see in others. We project onto the people we love most deeply. We place on them parts of ourselves we have not yet integrated. And this means something extraordinarily important for what you are experiencing right now. When this person recedes, when the relationship breaks, or pauses, or falls into silence, you do not only lose them, you lose the mirror. You lose the face that was carrying something of yours, something you placed there without knowing, something that was yours all along. The ache is real. It is among the most real things a human being can feel. But the source of the ache is not only outside you. A significant portion of what you are grieving is something in yourself that has not yet been given a home. This is not a metaphor. This is Jung's framework for what love actually is and what loss actually costs. The person you are thinking of tonight, the one whose absence or distance or silence creates that weight you carry, they are not simply a person you miss. They are a doorway. And the question Jung would ask is not, how do I get them back? The question is, what is on the other side of that door? Now I want to walk you through what this actually looks like in practice. Because Jung did not only theorize, he traced the stages of this inner process, the movements of the psyche when it has been bonded to another and then separated without resolution. And these stages are recognizable. You will know them. The first stage is what I call the substitute. In the immediate aftermath of the separation, or the rupture or the silence, the conscious mind moves with extraordinary speed to fill the gap. You make plans. You seek distraction. You reach for connection with other people, other things. You perform recovery. And some of this is genuine. Some of this is you, legitimately trying to continue living. But beneath this, beneath all the motion and the noise, the unconscious has not been consulted. It has not agreed to the substitution. It has not accepted the replacement. And so what happens is a strange doubling. On the surface, you are present in your life. Beneath the surface, some essential part of you is still in the relational field you shared with this person. Still there. Unmoved. Waiting. You may recognize this in yourself. The moments when you are surrounded by people and feel utterly alone in a specific way. A way that has nothing to do with the people around you. The dreams that return to the same emotional landscape, the same unresolved conversation. The way certain songs or places or hours of the day carry a quality of presence that does not belong to the present moment. That is not dysfunction. That is the unconscious being loyal to something incomplete. The second stage is what I call the return of the proof. This is the stage where the mind begins to argue with itself. You will find yourself revisiting the story of what happened, not because you want to, but because the unconscious is doing something Jung called compensation. It is trying to balance the equation. It is searching for the place where the narrative broke down, the moment where something true was not said, the junction where a different outcome was still possible. This is often mistaken for obsession. It is not. It is the psyche's method of metabolizing experience, the same process that happens in dreams, where the unconscious replays and rearranges in search of integration. The difference is that during waking life, this process is more painful because you have consciousness watching it happen. You may experience this as replaying specific moments, as imagining conversations that did not occur, as a strange mental rehearsal of what you would say if you could. This is not madness. This is the unconscious doing the work that the conscious relationship was never allowed to complete. The third stage is what I call the confrontation with the image. This is the pivot point, the place where the psychological work either begins or gets abandoned. At some moment during this process, the person you are thinking of starts to feel less like a real individual and more like a symbol of something. They become, in the psychological sense, larger than themselves. Their face carries a quality that ordinary faces do not carry. Their absence has a weight that ordinary absence does not have. This is the projection revealing its. The unconscious is showing you, through the sheer intensity of the feeling, that something of you is caught up in this person. Something of your own inner life, some aspect of who you are or who you long to be, has been placed on them, without your knowing. This stage is extremely uncomfortable, because recognizing the projection does not make the feeling less real. It makes it more real, in a different way. You are not merely missing a person. You are missing a version of yourself that only seemed to exist in relation to them. The fourth stage is what I call the stillness. Not peace. Not yet. But a particular quality of quiet that begins to emerge when the searching exhausts itself, when the replaying slows, when the imagined conversations begin to fall silent. This is not giving up. Jung would be very precise about this. This is not resignation or defeat or the final closing of a door. This is the psyche completing a necessary descent, going down into the dark, where the unconscious actually lives, sitting in the not knowing. And it is precisely here, in this stillness, in this particular quality of emptiness, that the next movement becomes possible. Something in you that was caught in the other person begins, slowly, to return. Not dramatically, not all at once, but something loosens. Some piece of yourself that had been living out there, in the hope of return, in the archive of memory, in the face of someone else, begins to come home. But here is what Jung would add, and this is the part most people skip. Everything I have described so far could be used to simply wait more patiently, to endure more philosophically, to hope with better vocabulary. And that is not what this is for. The shadow work turn, the most important turn, is this. The question is no longer what is happening to you. The question is, what are you being asked to become? Jung believed that every significant relationship and every significant rupture is a call from the psyche toward individuation. Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming more fully yourself. Not a better version of someone else's idea of you, not a healed version of your wounded self, the full, uncompromised reality of who you actually are, with all of its complexity, its darkness, its unlived potential. The person you are thinking of tonight, the reason you found this video, they have participated, whether they know it or not, in your individuation. They have pulled forward parts of you that were dormant. They have made you feel things you did not know you could feel. They have revealed needs you did not know you carried. They have cracked open places in you that had been sealed. This is not a small thing. This is enormous. And it is completely independent of whether they return. The shadow work asks you to look directly at what this experience has revealed. Not about them, about you. What did you discover you needed through loving this person? Parts of yourself came alive in this relationship that have been silent in other parts of your life. What truth about yourself were you on the verge of telling, and then didn't? These are not comfortable questions. They are the right ones. Jung would say, the unconscious will keep speaking through this situation until you receive its message. Not the message about them, the message about you. And the moment you begin to genuinely receive it, the moment you begin to turn the lens inward with real honesty and real courage, the quality of the longing shifts. It does not disappear, but it transforms. It becomes something workable, something that belongs to your becoming rather than your stasis. This is the work, not the waiting, not the hoping, not the analyzing of their behavior and their patterns and their reasons. The looking, with steady, compassionate eyes, at what your own unconscious has been trying to tell you all along. What does this person represent that you have not yet found in yourself? Where did you give away your sovereignty in self? Where did you give away your sovereignty in this relationship and call it love, waiting to be reclaimed? These questions are not comfortable, but the unconscious does not ask comfortable questions. It asks necessary ones, and something in you, that quiet something that knew this was about more than them, is ready. So let me bring this to its landing. The person on your mind right now, They may return, they may not. I cannot tell you which it will be, and any voice that claims to know is offering you something other than truth. What I can tell you, what Jung's entire framework points toward with extraordinary consistency, is this. Whether they return or not, what is happening in you right now is not nothing. The pain is real, not imagined, not exaggerated, not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is the evidence of a real bond, a real encounter between two psyches, a real exchange at a level that consciousness alone cannot contain or resolve. You felt something genuine. That does not expire. And the longing, that specific ache that has no clean name, is not misleading you. It is pointing. It is pointing towards something incomplete that wants to be completed. Something in you that is asking, quietly but persistently, to be taken seriously. You are not at the end of something. You are inside something that is still. The unconscious does not rush. It does not move on schedule. But it moves with purpose, always, always with purpose. And even in the silence, even in the stillness, even in the hours when the weight is most heavy, it is doing its work. You are already in the process. You already began, perhaps the moment you found this. The turning inward is not a defeat. It is the most important journey a human being can take. And wherever this person, whatever the unconscious is doing in them in this quiet hour, you are not alone in the field. You never were. Tell me one thing in the comments. Does this resonate with something you're carrying right now? You don't need many words. Even one is enough. I read every message. If this reached something in you tonight, share it with someone who needs to hear it. There is someone in your life carrying this quietly, alone. This might be exactly what they need. Subscribe for weekly teachings that go this deep. Into the places where psychology and the human soul actually meet. You close this video and return to your evening. You are not defined by what is unresolved. You are willing to look at it. That honesty is not weakness. It is the beginning of everything. Take care of yourself tonight.